Perfect timing with the music. Welcome to our last class day of Latinx Communication Studies. I'm very sad in one way, but I'm also very happy to get to see you again. It feels like it's been a while. It's been like a week and a half. Hope you've been surviving finals and are excited for what's coming up. I also want to thank the guests in the room who've come to support our different performers today, so it's great to see you all here. I just have a couple of announcements to get us started. I wanted to thank Maria Saldaña Suárez for timing today. So if you want to look at time cues, you'll see a 4 or 5 minute card, just so you know generally where you are with time. If you're the group of 3, you have 7 to 8 minutes, so you'll see a 7 to 8 time cue. So Maria's over there timing. I want to thank Luis Mendoza for being here from CCTV. Thank you so much, Luis. And thanks again, audience members, and thank you, class members, for doing these final performances. I've been taking a sneak peek at what's available in the file folder, and it's really exciting to see what you've been putting together. Just really fast, for those who aren't in the class and don't know what this assignment is about, briefly, what is this asking you to do? Can anyone just shout out what you've been asked to do here?
Imagine like a different world in a way.
Yes, yeah, imagine a different world, absolutely, than the one we exist in today. Anybody else? Yeah, so it's a way of performatively sharing things that have resonated with different class members throughout the course. So we've talked about racism, we've talked about Latinidad, so what's that kind of Latinness or essence of being Latinx. We've talked about immigration, we've talked about food trucks, we've talked about so many different things in class. So there was a lot of flexibility in terms of how you could engage those topics. So in terms of sequence of events then, the performance list is right up here, so just kind of be ready to come up as others are applauding for the group that went right before you. We will have time for general comments and Q&A afterward. I'm afraid if we do comments and Q&A after each one of these, we'll be here till like 10 a.m. tomorrow, which would be great, but you probably don't want to be here that long. So we'll do them all at the end, and then there will be a time for some self-reflections if you're in the class, and that will just be a written thing that we do. Are there any questions before we get started? Okay, I'm very excited for this, so we'll go ahead and start with Fran, who already has a video up here. There is a clicker up here should you need it if you want to advance your slides. Okay.
Oh, 180? Make sure the music's on. How do I make sure it's on? Just down. Yeah, you're very quickly. Oh, I don't want it. I'm going to talk.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So I'm Fran, everyone. So I created a little mini movie. I've been calling it. So what you're about to see is a mini movie documenting my experiences and moments with my Peruvian family, which is where I feel closest to my Latina identity. This mini movie will hopefully give viewers a small look into my life. While I've always been a proud Latina, more of a proud Peruana, growing up I've had to deal with the challenges of not being Latina enough. But as I continue to grow, I've also learned how I benefit from my identity, as I'm half white, half Peruvian. Being categorized as racially ambiguous as my light complexion was and continues to play a major role in shaping my identity, perspectives, and position not only at Willamette, but in society. So as a disclaimer, I went into this project with an idea, but throughout the process of creation, I realized it got way more personal than I had originally intended. So this autoethnographic final was really a form of catharsis for me in highlighting the key terms labeled Latinidad, accents, language, and Spanglish. While not overtly mentioned in the mini movie, each clip that you'll see embodies the varying aspects of these key terms we've discussed in class. I grew up in a bilingual household where my 4 family members spoke Spanish, but I never spoke a word of it until I got to high school. But language and Spanglish were always the foundation of my feelings because they helped me understand when I felt isolated and connected to my family and culture. My understanding of Latinidad reminds me of all the moments y'all will soon see in the mini movie, and also of the relationship I had with my dad, who unfortunately passed away 4 years ago from cancer. While you won't hear in the mini movie, my dad had a thick accent and spoke broken English, saying things like "I'm proud about you" instead of "I'm proud of you," and spelling "daddy" with 1 D on the gifts and letters he wrote me. But I always understood him. The same understanding has helped guide me in trying to understand my identity. So I have a little mini movie I made. Should I turn off the lights? Yeah, should I? Thank you.
Cuando despiertan mis ojos y
Oh, very important. The background music is very important to this mini movie, and it's all in Spanish. So I have the Spanish version from Diego Peru, and then the English translation, so y'all can follow along. And I only printed 12 copies, so maybe can you share with your neighbor?
There you go. Sorry.
Okay, so sorry. Okay, I'm just gonna start it over.
Cuando despiertan mis ojos y veo que sigo viviendo contigo, Perú. Emocionado, doy gracias al cielo por darme la vida contigo, Perú. Eres muy grande, lo seguiré haciendo, pues todos estamos contigo, Perú. Sobre mi pecho llevo tus colores y están mis amores contigo, Perú. Somos tus hijos y nos uniremos y así triunfaremos contigo, Perú. Unida la costa,
unida la costa,
unida la sierra,
unida la sierra,
unida la selva contigo, Perú. Unido el trabajo,
unido el trabajo,
unido el deporte, unidos el norte, el centro y el sur. A triunfar,
peruanos,
que somos hermanos,
que
se haga victoria nuestra gratitud. Te daré la vida y cuando yo muera, me uniré en la tierra contigo, Perú. Te daré la vida y cuando yo muera, me uniré en la tierra contigo, Perú. Unida la costa,
unida la costa,
unida la sierra, unida la selva contigo, Perú. Unido el trabajo,
unido el trabajo,
unido el deporte, unidos el norte, el centro y el sur.
Toma, toma.
A triunfar, peruanos, que somos hermanos, que se haga victoria nuestra gratitud. Te daré la vida y cuando yo muera, me uniré en la tierra contigo, Perú. Te daré la vida y cuando yo muera, me uniré en la tierra contigo, Perú.
Celebrate his birthdays in this patio. You remember? All the time. Oh, and Fernando was telling me how he would blame me. It's like, ya viene la gringa, ya viene la gringa. I never knew that he used me as that excuse. Nunca sabía que yo era la excusa. But you know, I loved that man so much, and because I loved him so much, my daughters are love, and we are all about love now. And so we are. I know it sounds funny, but you know, he's still with us. When I love my daughter, it's because I loved him, and there's just so much love here. So thank you again, and please don't be strangers. I love that you guys are in our lives.
Okay, we will be here.
Please. No, but we have to remember that we're family too. He loved you guys. El quería a ustedes.
He was an amazing guy.
It's been hard for us to be on our own this year, and we've missed you all terribly. And I just want to say thank you again for this celebration, and salud.
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 For George.
For George.
Hi, I'm Madison.
I'm Daphne. I'm Melissa.
And the inspiration for our autoethnographies was from the day in class where Catalina asked us to think about how we would meaningfully intervene and disrupt harmful racist rhetoric in our everyday lives and in the interactions that we have with people as we move throughout different spaces. And so all of us identifying as white women, and we're all from the Willamette Valley of Oregon, have experienced firsthand and been complicit in the overwhelming whiteness of the state. And so for our autoethnography, we wanted to interrogate how Oregon has become so white, and basically how to make better, productive, safe spaces despite the whiteness of the state, and hopefully that will change over time. Yeah. So Oregon holds a very interesting image in popular culture of a progressive liberal haven where everyone hikes and recycles and votes Democrat, but that image is obviously very much not reflective of reality. Oregon's history as one of the final territories of an era of manifest destiny and westward expansion has obviously shaped what Oregon looks like today, and our experiences in it, and how our ancestors have come to settle in the state. Yeah, so the theme and general what we want you to think about and take away from this project is Oregon was configured rhetorically and legally as a safe space, as a utopia for white people when it was created as a territory and as a state. And so we want to turn that on its head and be how can we challenge that and trouble that, and obviously flip it so that it's not a safe space, it's not a white utopia, it's actually quite the opposite, making it a safe space for all sorts of people to come live here. Yeah, so this slide just explains, we did research about how the demographics look the way that they do as a result of the state constitution, and just how recent this history is. This was not long ago. And you can see, I believe Belita came last year and gave a lecture about how Oregon has been so white. I don't know if anyone got to attend that, but yeah, and here's just a general timeline, and there's even a specific reference to a gathering in Salem of the Ku Klux Klan. And basically, yeah, just how incredibly recent this history is.
Yeah. Okay, and then these are just the 2010 Census Bureau demographics of Oregon. So this is becoming a little bit dated now, but as you can see, yes, as recent as 2010, Oregon is predominantly white. So that's just something that we wanted to point out. And then also, according to Jonathan Buck of the Statesman Journal, Oregon was the most moved to state in 2017. And so, considering these demographics and what's going to become of the 2020 census, the fact that people are moving here is just something to consider. And we also just really wanted to emphasize that point. Yeah. So, and then,
okay, so my autoethnography is we were thinking about how much we've grown or not grown, and how we would go back and redo certain interactions if we had a chance, and carrying that knowledge with us moving forward. And so I'd kind of forgotten about this because I'm getting to the point where high school was a long time ago. But my high school, I'm from Lebanon, Oregon, which is a 45-minute drive from this campus. And our mascot was the Lebanon Warriors. And during my sophomore year of high school, there was a big controversy that was triggered by the decision of the Oregon State Board of Education to adopt a rule prohibiting Oregon Public Schools from using Native American names, symbols, and imagery or as school mascots. And they were given until just last year, July of 2017, to finally comply with this. So there was a significant amount of pushback from my dominant white community on this, and the Board of Education held over 8 hours of public testimony on the topic and received over 700 pieces of written testimony. Eventually an option was brokered where school districts could negotiate with the local tribes to talk about education initiatives, to change curriculums, and to discuss appropriate uses of Native American imagery versus inappropriate, and the permission of the tribes to use their imagery could be revoked at any time. So like eventually like we got really good like agreements and like legislation to avoid this. This is, I'm not in this picture, but I remember attending this pep rally and like seeing this picture being taken. That's my classmates. And that, what you're seeing in that picture is the entrance to the high school, and that is still up to this day. And it's very much like a Plains Indian, despite like that like representation of Native people not at all being in Oregon. So there's just a lot of levels as to why it's problematic. But basically, I remember this incident because I didn't see the importance of it at the time. I was very dismissive and glib about the significance of this legislation, and I didn't understand why it was so controversial. And basically, like, I got like very firmly but like kindly like schooled by one of my teachers who I really respected, who basically like made me reckon with like my white privilege and like the fact that like my life and like my knowledge of the world was very much like a 0-point epistemology, and I knew very little like context about other people, and I'd never been forced to reckon with like other people's lived experiences growing up in a very white space. And so I like wanted to reflect on this experience that I had because I'm like embarrassed and ashamed that I ever like thought that way. But it's also an example for me of like how white people especially like can take like an educational approach when calling out like other white people and like forcing them to really defend their stances and be like, really, why do you think it isn't like significant that Native people be depicted this way? And basically, like, he forced me to like really reckon with my opinion and change it and learn more about it and educate myself. So that's something that I have grown a lot from. Yeah.
Great story, Madison. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about an experience I had in high school. And to give you a little bit of background, I went to high school in Staten, Oregon. I went to a small Catholic high school. There's probably only about 150 to 200 students there. And each year we would have a Pi Day celebration. The school is also predominantly white. And yeah, so we had a Pi Day celebration, and my sophomore year of high school, there was a student, an exchange student from China, who had performed and just really won the competition to recite numbers in the pi number. And it was very impressive, it was really great. And the following year, my junior year, when the exchange student was gone, he actually went to Harvard. Another kid in my class decided to compete, and that was very exciting. And he probably only recited about like 3 numbers into pi, but his tone was different, and I didn't really understand what was happening, but he was essentially trying to make fun of the Chinese student from the year, the exchange student from the year before. And it took me probably like 60 seconds to realize what was happening, and this was in front of the entire student body, and everyone started laughing, but it was like a bad racist joke. And at the time I didn't really know how to react, and after considering what we had learned in class and considering these keywords, identity, community, resistance, safe space, and rhetoric of difference, I really wish that I had gone to my administration to try to hold the student accountable or confronted him myself, but at the time, like, I just didn't really think that I could have done anything or reacted a certain way. And moving forward, I'm trying very hard to be conscious about my reactions towards incidents such as this, and really trying to hold myself accountable and hold other people accountable. And that was what I learned from that experience.
Hi everyone. I'm going to be talking about kind of going back to what Madison mentioned about Oregon being a white utopia, and going back to nature and really like that idea of like a hipster land, I guess now. I'm just going to be talking about my reflection on the back to earth, farm to table movement within food. And I'm going to read a little reflection. The image that was in my head when I envisioned where our food came from was from an ideal white farmer living the American dream. I understand how problematic that is now, but from the day I was able to comprehend how valuable of a role food plays in our lives, I never questioned whether or not my food was ethically sourced, or if those involved are sustaining and supporting themselves through appropriate pay and employee rights. Whether I gained this perspective from my academic institutions or my parents framed it that way, or whether I was just truly unaware, this was truly a serious disconnect between what I was taught and what was reality. When I got a glimpse at the reality of the food and agriculture system, I realized it was entirely different than the perspective I had had my entire life. But as I've grown and learned more about food justice and found the niche that inspires me to help to make change, I realized just how whitewashed the food system truly is, particularly the good food movement, which is one that focuses on farmer and consumer relationships in particular, and one that fascinates me very much. A movement like this is especially valued in a state like Oregon, which focuses so much on the relationship between nature and its agricultural resources. The idea of focusing on whole, organic, fresh, and local food seemed to align with my values, but as I have visited farms, gotten to know people within the movement, and done a lot of reading on the subject, I realized how exclusive it was. There is hardly any representation for people of color within the movement. Farmers, chefs, and entrepreneurs of color are completely pushed to the margins within our food system, and the good food movement is no exception. In a movement like this that calls for people to know your farmer and have a relationship with them, farm laborers are oppressed and undervalued yet again. One way for me to be an ally is by bringing attention to farmers of color and what they contribute to the agriculture system. It also means knowing when to use my voice to elevate oppressed voices and know when to step back and let other people speak. In the context of this situation, being an ally means understanding my privilege, listening and learning more about these issues, speaking up but not over, realizing my mistakes when I make them, apologizing for them, and doing the work to put these steps into action. So these are kind of all just reflections and things we've learned throughout our lives as Oregonians. And we just invite you guys to really grapple with the idea of what a safe space is. And we also made this poster, and we started to do a little bit of tabling, so people came and shared what a safe space felt like to them. They wrote things like no judgment, surrounded by family and friends, etc. And we just invite you guys to sign it, and we have suckers for after class if you guys want to sign it and get a sucker.
Yes, we would very much value your contribution to this poster as we try to facilitate and foster a safe space, not just at the school, but also in Oregon and for infinity.
Thank you. Put that on my office door.
Oh, you can put this on your office
Or
door.
somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that is our presentation. And
so for me, I sort of wanted to reflect on the way that I interact with workers on campus, and so I wanted to use this platform as an intervention on how we as students can do better to support the workers on campus, because many of them are Latinx and immigrants, and I think it's important to recognize that they belong to this university as much as we belong to this university, because in our classrooms we spend a lot of time talking about social issues such as labor rights and labor struggles such as the farm workers, which is really important and really relevant. But at the same time, we need to talk about the workers who make our food and who clean this classroom, and the ones who take care of the lawns and the grass and who make our campus really beautiful. And so, for example, something that people don't know a lot is that last summer when students weren't here, the workers who work in the facilities to clean the classrooms were switched to night shifts versus day shifts. And that meant that for a lot of these people who have families and have other responsibilities, that they had to quit because they had no option. They either had to accept that change or not. And in comparison to other things that have happened on this campus, they didn't get much attention. There weren't any protests for them like there were for Willamette Academy. And this isn't to say that they matter more than Willamette Academy, but we should also take the time when we are talking about social justice and other social issues to remember that these workers are important too, and that we should remember them. And so another thing is that right now, when it comes to the maintenance and facility workers, there are a lot of vacancies. And so what that means is that these workers are really being overworked. I was talking to Blanca, who is one of the workers in Donny, and she told me how she's responsible for taking care of all of Donny, but also all of Collins, which is really big, and it's a lot of work for one person, and it's really unfair. But also being mindful of the ways that we navigate through these spaces that are shared, and how we as students put on all this extra labor on workers when we don't do our part to clean up after ourselves. Like for example, like in Doni, like I always see these people who cook, and like yes, you can cook and everything, but when you're using spaces that are shared, then it's your responsibility to clean up after yourself. Like it's not their job to clean your dishes. It's not their job to throw out the trash because you can't walk, like take 2 minutes to walk outside of Doni and throw your trash away. And so it's really important to be mindful of like how, of like what you're doing and like your mess. And yes, we are students, but we also, that isn't really about excuse to push all of this labor onto them because they're already overworked. And I think something else is how we need to have communication with these workers, and we need to get like spend time to know them, because there's a lot that they have to say and a lot that they know, but also it's important to be open with them and to talk with them, because then when something does happen, they can come and like tell you. Because for those of you who don't know, the E&E, the Center for Equity and Empowerment, used to be in the art building. So my first year, summer 2015, the E&E was in the art building, and one of the workers there, he had like come back and like from a surgery, and so he was gone for a while, and someone from the art department had complained to his supervisor that he wasn't doing his job, when in reality it was like he was gone because he had had a surgery because he hurt his back. And so he came to us really concerned because we talked to him, and he was saying that he was scared to lose his job because students weren't doing their part to clean up after themselves. And so what we did was we wrote an email to both the maintenance supervisor but also the art professor who had like complained about them, and thankfully he wasn't fired. But it's really like that's why it's really important to have communication with workers, because like they're human, and like they're just like really important component of our campus, like regardless of the labor that they perform, like they share the same space as we do. And like for me, like the maintenance workers and the facility workers are just really special to me, like as a person, because of how when I came to Willamette as someone who is brown, as someone like I'm not white, and so like for me coming into Willamette, I felt really unwelcome, and like to me the maintenance workers represented like a sense of like community and home, because I could talk with them and stuff like that. And so like just as like a side note, it's really important that when you're interacting with these people every single day, sometimes it's really important to get to know their names. And so I'm just gonna like give a sort of like a shout out to the few, like some of the ones that I know personally. So like to Betty from the E&E, and Blanca from Doni, and to Uncle Leroy, who used to be the one to clean up the E&E.
Hi everyone, I'm Ethan, and this is Jack. And well, the title of our project is Another World is Possible, which is borrowing from Professor Dionis's hashtag that she created for this assignment, but we think that is very fitting for the nature of our project. But before I get into that, I wanted to go first into like the topic that we were trying to explore, which is whiteness on Willamette's campus. And so Willamette's campus is a predominantly white university. Last time I checked, it's nearly 60% of the student population is white, and 70% of the faculty is white. And so, and this shows like, I mean, historically this remained the same, and this shows when one goes into, say, like the archives of Willamette, looking at like just who is represented in the photographs of the Willamette population, it's very white. And so, for our project, we wanted to really focus on this type of media representation produced by the campus itself, and just to see and critique like its own history. And so for our project, we chose to go into the archives and pick out specific images and recreate them as like a form of pastiche, like borrowing or taking something that has already been created and making it our own. And so for our project, we recreated these photos, but with students of color that go to London instead. And to do this, like the purpose of this is to basically decenter whiteness as like on the university, to imagine a Willamette campus that is truly like a diverse, has a truly diverse student body and isn't just like visibly white. And this becomes like a transgressive act because it goes directly against what like Willamette's history and Willamette's identity to engage with the university's past and vision a different future.
Yeah, we really wanted to, we thought like through visual rhetoric, because we both are like fans of like photography and stuff, we thought it would be very powerful just to kind of like have these photos that were in the archive that like tell the history of Willamette, but now like putting like people of color, students of color in the photos and kind of saying like, here's this space for you, like you are actively creating the history of Willamette. And so we kind of saw it as a form of resistance as well, to kind of like give them this space that's their own and like kind of just have this like powerful message to send. And like de-linking, we kind of saw that as like kind of de-westernization process of like, you know, like kind of stopping like the perpetuated whiteness that's on campus, kind of changing the idea that like small liberal arts campuses are only for like rich white students, because we know like at Willamette that's not true. So we just want you to keep these keywords in mind while we show you these photos we made. Yeah.
And just like one thing to keep in mind is like you'll see like the same recurring faces. That's mostly due to typed in strains as well as like, you know, it's finals. So we can only get so many people to agree to do this on the weekend. So.
And also just like the campus around the students changed as well, which we tried to find the exact location, but things weren't exactly the same.
But I guess it shows like how this goes beyond like temporal boundaries as well, and like engaging in the past. So those are the images that we created. Thank you for listening.
All right, hello everybody. Chris.
Cameron.
So we chose to focus on machismo for our autoethnographic study. We chose 5 keywords to sort of illustrate and delve into what machismo is from what we discovered in our research. And at the end of it, we're going to perform, or I'll perform a sort of, I guess, poem that illustrates our own experience with it. Let's get started.
Yeah, so we're going to start off with machismo. In the Martinez reading, it was described as adherence to traditional masculinity and the authority figure or image of men who regain strength and health independently. To admit needing health or having a mental issue means admitting weakness. We also learned that in some cultures, that weakness or that asking for help or that mental illness can be seen as a curse or a weakness, and you're not truly a man.
Yeah, and just to expand on that definition that we found in an article titled Machismo in Cultural Criticism. it is defined as a form of hypermasculinity that is strong, violent, phallocentric, independent, and constantly in need of proving itself.
The next thing we looked at was voice, and we said that voice is the distinctive style or manner of expression of the rhetor, and it's really any form of conversation. So the way you identify as yourself, that could be your own personal voice in the sphere that you're in, or in just the way that you can interact and participate.
And a real-world example of this is we chose the LA rapper Kid Frost. I don't know if you've heard of him. He is someone who attempts to illustrate the goings-on and struggles of his neighborhood. However, he's sort of trapped in a mold of machismo where he's unable to completely, he's unable to, very quote. He would need to transcend his current machismo mold in his rap performance as he sees it in order to articulate a more complete recovery of Chicano masculinity and deconstruction of the dominant ideology.
We also chose to look at rap, this rapper specifically, but rap music in general, because it is perpetually known for hypermasculinity and the machismo mold, which we'll mention a couple times. The next big thing is labels. So talking about that machismo mold, it's how you're labeled in society. So a quote we got from Obler was, "The language issued raised by the growing presence of Latinos in the United States provide an extreme example of the potentially explosive impact on American institutional life of the label Hispanic and of the homogeneous activity of Latin American descent."
And a sort of parallel we drew from this government label to us as a sort of forced identity with the label of machismo. It's sort of presented to us through our current media that we experience just growing up. So much so that in one study titled Men, Muscles, and Machismo, the relationship between television violence, exposure, and aggression, and hostility, and the prejudice of masculinity, it was taken into account that often hypermasculinity is just it's seen as a pre-existing condition when conducting studies surrounding it itself.
We decided to look at agency next, and we defined it as the power or ability to be heard or acknowledged. Factors including race, your social status, your identity, your sexuality, and your gender. There's obviously many more, but as we learned this semester, that's just immediate labels, or those labels can affect your agency or your ability to be heard.
Specifically looking back to our real-world example, our rapper who attempts to convey the issues that are going on that he sees is sort of undercut with his label as a misogynist machismo.
Masculinity is defined as the possession of the qualities traditionally associated with men, and again through the semester we found this definition to be problematic. But we found in the Cha-Cha reading a definition of racial masculinity, of where it becomes an issue. And their lives were not on the way to middle-class status, marriage, property ownership, or white-collar careers. Their inactivities already fit a media and law enforcement profile that criminalizes racial masculinities, especially when embodied by Latino, African American, and Southeast Asian young men.
Mm-hmm. And continuing on with our example, we see that Kid Frost's masculine identity is automatically associated with anger, marginalization, violence, and virulent strains of machismo, being a Chicano body. And then, so we move on to the final portion, which is the performance.
So Chris is going to read this in English, but the inspiration for the translation comes from when Nitza Hernandez came to visit us. One thing that really stuck with me was she said that I feel in Spanish, so we just felt that this was a proper way to allow some people to better connect to it.
Yeah, we feel in English, some people don't. Little heads up is pretty abrasive and has some not great language. So what is toxic? Toxic is saying no homo when I compliment my bro. Because if I'm gay, then we're done so. If I call you gay, we might have to get into a rumble. I never stay humble. I grab my nuts and I yell. And I get drunk till I can't even stand. that's when I feel like a goddamn man. So what's toxic? Toxic is when you always pay, even when you can't. Because when your girl gets the check, that means you're less of a man. And you're supposed to get cake. Oh, I meant to say bread. But cake comes into play too. Because if you don't get that on the regular, man, you're a pussy, dude. So what's toxic? Toxic is when someone dies, and there's no way in hell that you'll cry. And you'll say that you're fine. Because if you show that you feel, man, you're weak as a child, alright? Man up. So you stuff it inside, and you wait for the pressure to break you. And that's fists in the air for those who would help. And you don't know where it came from, but you just have rage at this whole situation. Because not only your voice, but your agency's fucked. It's how you're gonna act when you're stuck in this mold. How you're gonna speak when you can't find the phrase and your tongue is on hold. You're programmed this way. Where if you don't behave in this way, you'll be told that you're not a man. Because you like flowers and birds, and you like to sew with your hand. Conditioned by movies and TVs and screens to believe that if you want to succeed, you can't ever feel or admit that there's anything you need. So that's toxic.
Okay, so I decided to make some material rhetoric for the project and present that to you guys. My presentation is going to be kind of free-form because I figured the right memories and stories would come up as I was speaking, but the key words that are going to guide me are family, memory, remembrance, depth, surviving, unity, creative expression, and community. So over spring break, there was a death in my family, and I ended up missing the last week, or the week after spring break. So Meredith she was a chosen mom to me, and I say chosen because she was part of my chosen family, which is something that I think is just absolutely miraculous because there are people who came into my life not being tied to me by blood, but chose to sit there and stick it out through everything. So she was very, very sick. She had Lyme's disease, undiagnosed for like 20 years. It wreaked havoc on her body. And so she spent a lot of time in bed because she was in so much pain. But it was just astounding to me how many lives she was able to touch from being in her bed. At her funeral, there were so many people who I didn't know because I met her when I was 3 years old. And I don't remember meeting her. She just was kind of always there in my life. But her daughter went to preschool with me, and Emily is my sister just as much as my younger sister Dina is. And so at her funeral, there were just so many people that I had never met because they were her friends in college who were saying, I just had all of these great stories about her. And she called herself a professional volunteer. Because she was unable to work because of how sick she was. But she was heavily involved with Girl Scouts. And I have to say, I was a terrible Girl Scout. I fought her the entire time. It was honestly amazing how she stuck it through with me and would just laugh when I was stubborn and not, paying attention or caring that we were learning how to resolve conflicts. Because I don't know, I fought her the whole time, but she stuck it out with me and she loved me through it. And I built the sculpture because she was one of the team managers with my mom for a competition that I would do in high school called Destination Imagination, which is a creative problem-solving competition with emphasis in teamwork. And we had such tight budgets. We'd have like $100 to do an entire performance, 8-minute performance, a set, and all of these intricate designs that required like engineering skills. So one year we built a tree, and it was probably 10 feet around in every direction. And our performance space was only 8 by 8, so it hung over. And we had to fold up the branches to get them through, and we made it out of driftwood. And we also had these lights, which these are made out of soda cans, and floral tape on Christmas lights. And we had them covering the tree, and Meredith just loved them to death. and they were so pretty, and she wanted us to make some for her to put up around her bed. But we had made probably 1,000 of the soda cans and had stayed up till midnight multiple nights, so we were a little bit worn out, so we never got around to doing that. But it was one of those things. She was very sick, and like there are members in her family now who just refuse to acknowledge that she was sick and don't want to remember her as sick. And so there have been pictures that we have posted on Facebook that they have asked us to take down because she doesn't look healthy enough, and that's not how they want to remember her. But in the picture, all I can see is how freaking happy she was. And so the heart is a little bit misshapen, but that was intentional because your heart doesn't have to like be working physically in order to do everything that you have to do and love everybody that you need to love, or that you just simply want to love. She loved everyone, but I was talking to my mom the other day, and I was saying, of course she needed a pacemaker. Like, of course she was working so hard. She loved everyone. Like, you could see it at the funeral. Her friends from college were there. Everybody was there. So that's why it's a little bit purposely misshapen. That's all.
Own support. I don't know. I just want it hurt. Sorry, I'm a little shaky, so I'm gonna stand over here. That damn sandwich. Y'all know which one I'm talking about. The peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Everyone ate them, apparently. It was the iconic snack that all Americans ate, I guess. Except me, until my dad decided to change that. Soon, jars of peanut butter and jelly started showing up in our cabinets next to our tapatio bottles. Later, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich appeared on my plate next to my tacos. I took a bite, and I hated it. It was the worst thing I've ever tried. So I moved it aside and ate the rest of my dinner. But then my dad saw it, and he got upset. He actually expected me to finish that damn sandwich. And he expected me to eat it for the rest of summer. And I needed to eat them because everyone else ate them. And if I didn't, I'd get in trouble. I didn't understand then that that was the start of my dad's efforts to blend me in because of my brown skin. We didn't celebrate Dia de los Muertos. We didn't celebrate Dia de los Reyes Magos. Sorry. So convenient. I never even fully understood what a rosca was or why baby Jesus was hidden in it. We just celebrated whatever our white Christian church celebrated, which often demonized a lot of our traditions, my culture's traditions. It soon began to affect other areas of my life. Papi, can I go to Marisol's carne asada? No. Dad, can I go to Lydia's barbecue? Of course you can. I became a stranger to my own culture. My family values are so different, I cannot relate to other familias mexicanas. Family reunions? Maybe my old brother came and visited. Big family parties. Perhaps when we crashed other family parties. That didn't mean I didn't have a big family. I'm actually number 9 of 10. But there's a difference between my siblings and I. I'm the only one my dad actually raised. He wanted me to blend in, so I couldn't really relate to my siblings. I soon became the mystery child in the family that no one really knew or hung out with. Why? Because I was at home eating peanut butter jelly sandwiches. I still tried to embrace my Latinidad on my own and find my place within my culture, but because I didn't have the skills of navigating within it, I was not fully accepted. I was called whitewashed, stuck up, fresa, and other names. It didn't matter how much of Mexico's history I knew or how good my Spanish was. I was an outsider. I became extremely depressed because not only did I not fit in with my own people, I was still being treated differently because of my brown skin. I don't blame my dad though. He thought he was helping me adapt so I can succeed in this white racial frame. He witnessed firsthand what happens when you don't fit in. Can't speak English, they'll make fun of your accent. Can't read English, they'll take advantage of you in your papers. Undocumented, la migra. He realized that even before he spoke, he was judged by his appearance, and he was treated differently. He thought that if I could blend in with them, I would be respected and receive the treatment they reserved only for themselves, the one that he never received. He loves me and wanted me to have the best shot at life he could give me. So no, I don't blame him. It was racism that made him believe that was the best approach. The peanut butter and jelly sandwich approach.
Hello everybody. For this project, I made what I'm calling a flip book film, which you also might recognize as a stop motion style. But as someone who is passionate about storytelling, I remember discovering this way of working when I was young with ideas that I was unsure how to express on my own with just the resources that I had available to me. So back then I used Microsoft Paint and Windows Movie Maker, which I found on the computer, to make my versions of animated movies, but I'm not very good at animation. As I continue opportunities to tell stories that are my own and stories that are others through various mediums, it's important to keep a critical awareness of stories that are mine to be telling as a white storyteller, and maintain mindful of the ways in which the stories that are mine to be told are being told. So with that in mind, Toni Morrison once said that all good art is political, and there is none that isn't. And the ones that try hard not to be political are political by saying, we love the status quo. End quote. So in class we've discussed a lot about various ways of disrupting the status quo through all of the course concepts. And the short film that I'm presenting today is titled The Strangers. And it's a stylistic homage to my formative years as an artist, with certain updates in methodology to reflect work that I have done, and things that I have learned since, while using the following key terms to inspire the narrative arc, which are the stranger, as you can see in the title, borders, assimilation, coloniality, and unity. And the project aims to look at these very real, very human experiences through a non-human, speculative scope, and creatively interpret the concepts. Though I invite you to apply whatever concepts you might see referenced through your own perspectives. So it's about 100 seconds. So please enjoy. Thank you. And just before I sit down, Irafalizer is the musician who is an experimental musician located in Chile, and he makes his music available to the public domain. So I just wanted to verbally acknowledge his contribution to the project.
Hi, I'm Denise, and I created a video for you all. It's on YouTube. I went ahead and for this video, I interviewed 4 people. The way I got these people was I posted in the ENE Facebook page, and I asked if anyone who identified as like a Hispanic student and wouldn't mind me videotaping them for this like interview video. And I got 4 people to respond, which is great. And I recorded these interviews in the ENE. And so essentially what it was about identity and labels. And so I went ahead and I wrote out labels like Latina, Hispanic, Chicanx, and things like that. And then I told the interviewees to go ahead and like pick the labels that they identified with. And then I also told them to go ahead and write labels that they also identify with that weren't in this pile. And so to fit the time constraint, because it's 4 minutes and 39 seconds, I only got to showcase 2 labels for each person, but there's many more, so just like keep that in mind. So these are the ones that I kind of like chose to show, so I hope you like it.
So my name is Maria Saldaña, more broadly Latinx, because that's something that I've kind of like learned to be associated with, and something that I feel like is read onto me the more that like that discourse around brown bodies starts happening. So yeah, and also the X because queerness. I consider myself an artist, and that's a label that I think I want to more actively work on, like having placed onto me. And a lot of that has to do with like self-determination and like trying to vouch for myself. And yeah, I don't know how else to describe it. Like it's just something that I want to be considered as more in the future.
My name is Yorio Mejia Raya. I chose Mexican X primarily for the reason that, all my family is from Mexico specifically, so I just really want to stay connected to that culture because I feel that growing up in the United States, I lost a lot of that connection to Mexico, so it's just personally, it's really important for me to know about my culture, to know where I come from, and specifically the Mexican X because I just like that whole idea of like just because I know Spanish has like specifics as or O's for like feminine or masculine, but the one thing I do admire about English is it can be gender neutral, so it's really exciting. The last one I chose that I wrote is homosexual unicorn, and the primary reason why I wrote it as I did is A, because I'm gay, but also B, unicorn I'm just very extravagant, I'm very loud, I'm very boisterous because, I've been told not to be. And I'm just kind of like, why? Like, why don't you want me to, express myself or, be true to myself? Why are you trying to, quiet me down? I was just tired of being quieted down, shush, just be less, no, I'm not going to be less, after so many years of being told, just tone it down. I'm like, no, I'm going to tone it up. So, yeah, I just wrote that because, that's who I am, homosexual unicorn, and people like it. Oh, well.
So my name is Astalia Sarayeros, and I think I strongly identify especially with Nicaragua. I grew up with my dad's family who are from Nicaragua, and they came to the United States in the early 80s, fleeing a war, and so I grew up with that story and hearing what was happening, and so especially currently right now with everything that's happening in Nicaragua, this has definitely been a part of me trying to internalize and trying to figure out what this part of my identity means to me. I'm an artist. I am specifically a writer. I live in my writing. That's the way I express myself best. It's the way I communicate with the world. It's how I discovered all these parts of my identity. I think writing it down for me was like setting it in stone. So definitely artist is it's a part of me.
I'm Yasmin Robles Vasquez. So I chose Chicana because if you look at the real, like not the real, but the common definition of it, it's someone who was born in the U.S. but has Mexican origins. So like their parents were born like in the United States, or like their grandparents, but you're from the United States. So I identify strongly with Chicana because of course like my parents were born in the U.S. And we have strong Mexican roots, so Chicana has always been something I identify as. So I'm also like a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm a granddaughter, I'm someone's niece and all, and I'm also like a baseball lover and I love food. I said I'm a student, I'm a Catholic, I'm a fighter and all of that. So besides like judging someone's from like physical features and all, like there's a lot of identities and a lot of words that I identify with, so yeah.
So a little bit about that was mainly just as someone who identifies as Latina, I'm used to people like putting me in a box and just like labeling it, and along with this label, people tend to assume things like they assume the language I speak is Spanish or broken English. They assume that my education level is just high school, and they assume that this isn't my home. With this project, I wanted to showcase that you shouldn't label us. We get to label ourselves. That's kind of like an empowerment thing for us, and like we are all different and we come from different backgrounds. Just we're not all just Mexican, so we're from Nicaraguan or from El Salvador and things like that. We're not all uneducated. We are students, we're daughters, we're artists, we're more than just like what we look like, what our appearance is. So yeah, so you should treat us like that. Well, you should, yeah, you shouldn't, yeah. Okay, great. So yeah, so that was my video and I hope you liked it.
Okay, so I'm also going to be doing a spoken word kind of thing. This is about my family history and how I feel it has shaped my identity and like my worldview. Some of my key terms are remembrance, generational ties, advocacy, tragedy, and assimilation. And it's going to get kind of dark, so I just want to provide a trigger warning. I'm going to be recounting atrocities from the Holocaust, and as many likely know, that means there will be a focus on murder, suffering, and dehumanization. If anyone needs to leave throughout the performance because of its content, I completely understand. My Aunt Alice says she remembers the day the Nazis knocked on her door in Czechoslovakia. She said she knew she would never see her home again, as she and 23 other members of her family were packed shoulder to shoulder into poorly ventilated cattle cars. She was 14 years old. When Alice arrived at Auschwitz, she stood alongside all the women in her family, awaiting her fate as Nazis separated prisoners by those who were fit to work and those who were not. Ages 16 through 35 to the right, everyone else to the left. Health inspections in the right line said sick and weak to the left as well. Alice lost 19 members of her family that day, including one of her sisters. There were no goodbyes, and she never saw them again. For a year, Alice wore the same tattered dress every day, winter and summer. Every day, she ate a small piece of bread and a cup of soup. There was no water for prisoners to drink. She began to think the sores on her knees would never heal, and the hair on her head would never grow back again. When health inspections were performed, Alice hid beneath a pile of dirty clothing so as not to risk being sent to the gas chambers. She was not always so lucky. On 16 separate occasions, Alice was sent to face her death, suffocating among the terrified screams of starving, abused bodies within the dull, gray concrete walls of the gas chambers. On 16 separate occasions, she believed she would never see the light of day again, only to be saved by one of the most notorious Nazis in Auschwitz, Irma Gresa, the assistant of Joseph Mengele. What compelled her to save Alice is still unknown, but Alice has always told me she does not care, because without this sliver of humanity, she would not be alive today. After a year of torture, labor, and malnourishment, Alice and her mother were forced to endure a 500-mile march from Auschwitz to Bergen-Belsen. To Alice, this was the worst part of her experience. After several days, she broke down crying to her mother, proclaiming that she never wanted to take another step again and would rather be murdered by the Nazis than walk another day. But with her mother's insistence, she continued. After the liberation of Bergen-Belsen, Alice and her mother were the only two survivors of all 24 family members who had been taken to Auschwitz just a year and a half before. They spent a year recovering in a Swedish hospital, after which my grandmother's family took them into their Pennsylvania home. Alice quickly learned English and was eventually able to attend college despite never having had the opportunity to graduate high school. Though she has built a normal life for herself, She was never the same again. Now 88 years old, she lives in Manhattan, not far from her 3 children. Though she seems outwardly to have assimilated to U.S. culture, Alice sees herself first and foremost as a Jew, despite being totally irreligious in her own words. Though she exists within U.S. cultural norms, she proudly wears her identity as an immigrant, a Jew, and a survivor by speaking at universities, working as a docent at the Museum of Jewish Heritage, and practicing Jewish cultural traditions. This is a bold act of remembrance. Though she will never see her family again, their memories live on through the traditions that have been passed down through generations of my family. This is what Judaism means to me. I see it not as a religion, but as a culture that preserves the memory of all those lost. It is a reminder of the importance of resilience in the face of tragedy and community in the wake of trauma. It reminds me of just what it means to practice rather than simply say, never again. The U.S. collectively swore after World War II never to sit idly by in the face of injustice again, yet somehow just 70 years later, when the world is experiencing its biggest refugee crisis since World War II, complacence is rampant among those with the power to help. I have been afforded the privilege of being born in a place and a time with relatively low prominence of anti-Semitism. And given my family's history, I feel compelled to practice advocacy on behalf of those who are subjected to persecution for aspects of their identity they cannot control. I feel compelled to advocate on behalf of those for whom it is not too late. Though inaction is much easier than action, it is equally as impactful, if not more so. By advocating for refugees, we can do our part to prevent other human beings from preventing trauma like Alice has. I'll leave you today with the words of Elie Wiesel. There may be times when we are powerless to prevent injustice, but there must never be a time when we fail to protest. Thank you.
For years, media representation of Latinos has been negative. Latinos are portrayed as criminals, drug dealers, gang members, all negative stereotypes. And these stereotypes come from movies, from comments that politicians say, and just different ideas that have been made up through years. I wanted to learn more about my uncle's death, so I started to do some research. I read some articles from the Statements Journal that some neighbors around the area where he was stabbed believed that it was some kind of gang-related crime because they thought he was a gang member just because he wore loose clothes, he was a Latino, and he liked to draw. But if you ask his teachers, his friends, his tutors, he was not in a gang member, and it was definitely not a gang-related crime. My uncle was a smart student, a happy person. He was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. The problem with the negative stereotypes that the media has created affected the grieving of my uncle's death. When the police was investigating his murder, speculations about it being a gang-related crime came up because of his deviancy from a white male, especially since he was a 16-year-old brown kid attending McKay High School, where even the principal admitted that she was aware of gang activity at the school. I quote from an article. Police have not confirmed whether Gabriel's death was gang-related, although some witnesses speculate that it was. Richardson, the principal, said she thinks there is a little gang activity at McKay. End of quote. The ones who didn't know my uncle were the ones who suspected the worst. However, like I said, if you ask his teachers, tutors, friends, and family, the ones who knew him the best, you would know that instead of participating in a gang, he wanted to help those kids do better in school. He was a very intelligent man. He was on his path to a successful life. He was even in Willamette Academy here at Willamette University. He dedicated his time to school, family, and his art. He had dreams, many dreams, and he wanted to go to college and become an engineer. Another reason they tried to criminalize my uncle was because of his art. He had a passion for art, and he was very talented. Yes, he liked to draw cholos, clowns dressed as cholos, and his style was that of street art. But that was not the only thing he liked to draw. His artistic talent was passed down to my 18-year-old brother. My brother has been drawing since he was a kid. They express themselves through art. My brother draws what he likes, from what he listens to what he believes in, like religion. And although his drawings might look like they're gangster, he is not in any way related to gang activity. It is just an art. My uncle's talent has also been passed down to my 14-year-old cousin. She has been drawing since she was 7 years old, and she draws every single day. She reminds us a lot of my uncle, how he wanted to come home from school and draw. A brown Latino boy is not a criminal just because of how he dresses or what he likes to do. I want us all to take a few seconds of silence to remember those Latinos who have been falsely judged and criminalized for their deviance created by the negative stereotypes the media has created. I also want us all to change what we think when we see a Latino, because I believe another world is possible.
So I'm going to tell a story about my great-grandmother on my dad's side. I kind of made it part of my ongoing project of this website. Don't read anything that's up there, it's just the stuff I'm already going to say. Except my writing style is kind of goofy too, so just don't pay attention. It's just here for the photos. So that's my grandmother right here. This is my grandma, Marion, and this is my great-grandmother, Josefina Martinez. And I wanted to talk about her because she has a really amazing story, and she was really strong, and like my dad has always talked about her since I was a little kid. And also just thinking about autoethnography for this project, it's really just something I've been thinking about a lot since my dad's family is like all people of color, and then his father was white and my mother is white, so I'm white. So I've just been reflecting on that and what that means for me and my privilege and my family history and everything. So I'm going to try to go really fast because her life was like a lot, and I keep going over time when I practice this. I'm going to talk really fast. So Josefina Martinez, she was born in 1903 in New Mexico. Her whole family was on the Taos Pueblo reservation in New Mexico, and then some of her family moved off, including her parents, just to get better work slightly outside the reservation. So she was born right outside, and after that she had very little formal education, and she married really young to a man named Eusebio Saiz, which is where I actually get my middle name, is Saiz, and it's also my grandma's maiden name. So she married him, and he couldn't find any work in New Mexico, partially because most of the work was taken by the white men that were there, so he couldn't find any work except for in a mining town in southeastern Colorado. They moved there so that he could work in the coal mines, and they lived in the mining camp, and it was just horrible conditions, and they were really, really poor, and they had 3 kids. She had first 2 sons, and then my grandmother, Marion, and basically they lived there for a little while, and he was an alcoholic, and he became really abusive, and she put up with it because it never affected her children, and she needed to provide for her children, and her mother moved there with them as well. So she was just trying her best to keep him alive and well, and like keep him working so that she could have money for her family. But then one night in November of 1936, she'd had enough because of a specific incident, which is like gone down in my family history with like infamy and reverence for my great-grandma. So one night he came home drunk as usual, and he would always like yell and throw things and burn his clothes. And he came home and drunk and did all those things, but this time he picked up the pan of fry oil she was using to make fry bread for dinner, and he threw it out the window, and the boiling hot oil just barely missed my grandmother. and she got so mad because he had endangered her child. So this time she screamed at him to get out of the house, and he went back to the bar. And she waited a couple minutes and like made sure that like Marion was okay, and then she grabbed his gun and followed him to the bar. And I'm gonna do it the way my dad always did it when I was a kid. He would act it out like this. She like had his gun, and she went bam and like kicked open the door to the bar and yelled, "Eusebio!" And he turned around and she shot him in the chest. And he lived. She missed his heart by inches, and after that, everyone called her either Pistol Packin' Josefina or Dead-Eye Josie. And she would always tell my dad and his siblings, like, I missed his heart on purpose. I wasn't trying to kill him. I was just trying to scare him a little and teach him a lesson. And we don't know if that's true, but he lived, and he stayed in the hospital for a couple weeks. And my dad actually sent me this picture of the doctor's bill for $25. 1936, it says, for treatment, gunshot wound chest, $25, Eusebio 6. I think that's so funny. But, so that was that. And then, gotta keep moving. But after that, she ended up not going to jail because miraculously her brother was the sheriff of this little tiny town, and he kept her out of jail so that she could move away, leave Eusebio, and go back to New Mexico. She left the kids and her mom with her family in New Mexico, and she had to move to Albuquerque to be a housekeeper for wealthy white families, make that money, send it back for the kids and her mom. And this was during the Great Depression, and she was a woman of color, and she was a single mom in the 30s. It was just really impressive. And that went on for a while, and she was supporting them through that. And then World War II happened, and by then her two sons were old enough to go into the service, and she had saved up enough money to move with my grandmother Marion and her mother to San Francisco, and she worked in the shipyards in Oakland as a welder. And she did that until the war was over. Then she managed to get a job at a department store because everyone lost their jobs in the shipyards. And then she kept saving, and she was able to buy her own house in San Francisco. She remarried a really sweet man and the only grandfather my dad ever knew. My grandmother stayed in San Francisco her whole life and had my dad and his two siblings, and they grew up there, and they'd always go over to Grandma Josefina's house for dinner every Wednesday, and she'd make like fry bread and refried beans, and that was like their favorite meal, my dad's favorite meal. So I just wanted to tell her story because I think it's really interesting, and she was really, really strong, and she did so much in her life, and she stood up for herself, and like ideally we won't use guns for it, but you know, she stood up for herself and her family and just worked so hard. And I also just like autoethnography in this final has been really interesting and important for me to think about, and I have my journal here just to like kind of go over what I've been thinking about, and how like I don't feel the pressures and the racism and the struggles that my dad's family did because I'm white. And like I've just been thinking a lot about that, and like the pressure that they felt to enact good citizenship. And my great-grandmother did that. She like helped the war effort. She made so much money for herself and her family, and like most of the men in my dad's family were affected by alcoholism, and that comes with a whole host of stereotypes about Native people that also affected them, and especially like the pressures of like colonialism, and they were always trying to be more white when they were in public and like hiding their culture, except when they were alone they'd, you know, act how they normally would because they weren't like American in the sense that they were supposed to be, even though like my dad took a DNA test and like my grandmother is like 100% like her ancestors traveled here. They were like the first ones in New Mexico, but they weren't like American in the way that they were supposed to be. And especially just like the women in my dad's family, I really wanted to appreciate them, and like my great grandmother, because like they felt all that and more with like the abusiveness that can also come with machismo and all that. And I've gone over my time because her life was like so much, but that's all.
read something that I wrote for you guys. When I first got the prompt for this assignment, I thought I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I love writing in my free time and figured a poem connecting my life to concepts and terms we've learned in class was exactly what I was going to do. I absolutely loved Gloria Anzaldua's piece we read in class and how, through the act of catharsis, she was able to be so unapologetically herself. I thought about the aspects of my own life I felt were important and thought that by comparing them to concepts we learned in class that somehow that would be my contribution, my autoethnography. But how am I supposed to fit myself into a narrative I never even lived, compare my own experiences to ones I never had to go through and somehow have that be enough? I thought about bringing in the example of how I'm part of a military family, how every time we moved we were surrounded by such a strong sense of community and support. From tying yellow ribbons around trees to planting flags at the cemetery on Veterans Day to remember the fallen soldiers, these experiences largely shaped who I am and are something I am so grateful to have been a part of. I saw a strong contrast in the sense of community and support my family and I received compared to that of the countless individuals whose pieces we read throughout the semester, who were made to feel like outsiders and strangers in their own homes. Despite the fact that I had my family by my side through it all, every move seemed harder than the last. To imagine going through all that change without the community, support, and resources my family had is almost unimaginable. But it is a reality for so many. I remember when my dad got deployed, I cried my eyes out at the airport, not knowing if he was going to make it back safe or not. While I may know the fear of losing a loved one and feeling like I have no control, I don't know what it's like to have to live with the fear of not knowing whether or not my parents will be there when I get home, the constant threat of deportation keeping my family and I on edge. Hiking and being outdoors are both so important to my family. My mom chose to go on a hike for her birthday this year, something I wouldn't have chose to do, but definitely a choice that was fun for the whole family. We live in Washington now, and the amount of fire towers, lakes, rivers, and mountains to hike to is almost overwhelming. I don't think we could run out of hikes to do if we tried. Besides my sister talking about how she wants to be a park ranger one day and live in the mountains, rarely do I think about the labor that went into the hikes and the countless individuals and farm workers that allow so many of us to be able to enjoy such beautiful areas, not just in Washington, but all over the Pacific Northwest and beyond. The concept of environmental privilege didn't once cross my mind, and as I was writing this, I was wondering how it wasn't so obvious. Through my brainstorming during this process of writing this, I questioned how fair it was to even compare my experiences to that of others. While they're both so real and valid, they're so completely different, and to acknowledge that the long-standing wounds and effects of colonialism, border effects, and racism are something I will never know the feeling of is so important. Through the section on mental health and depression, I couldn't help but think of my own experiences. Struggling with anxiety and depression, trying to find treatments that work, and dealing with the stigma surrounding mental health are all feelings and experiences I know very well. While I may understand what the specific experience is like, I can't say that my experiences are due to the long-standing effects of deep-seated colonialism and being treated as a stranger in my own country. I was hesitant to take this class for many reasons. I had no idea what it would entail, and the thought of having to speak out at times on topics I knew little to nothing about didn't feel like my place. Even for this project proposal, I picked concepts I wrote were most comfortable to talk about. And I know I still have a lot of learning to do and a long way to go, and I think it's going to be something I have to constantly work towards. There are a lot of things I will never have to go through and will never fully understand, but not letting that stand in my way of accepting others and their experiences for what they are without comparison is a huge goal of mine. I hope you know that my autoethnography wasn't me trying to throw all my problems and life stories at you guys, but a way for me to show my way of processing how I will never know what it's like to experience something other than what I've experienced and to not pretend like I can. It's not my place to judge or compare or even try to explain what others have gone through, because the truth is, I don't know what it's like, I don't know how it feels, and that's okay. I've been thinking about this assignment a lot over the course of the semester, and I wanted to make sure that my work didn't feel like I was comparing my experiences in a way that put them above anyone else's or simplified anyone else's in a way that didn't account for the magnitude or long-standing effects others have gone through or will continue to go through. While my experience in education at Willamette hasn't been perfect, to say the least, I've learned an incredible amount and am walking away with a drive to learn and do more.
I'm Jesse, as she said, for all of those who don't know me. This is a story that I wrote about that has a lot of parallels to my life, but isn't exactly my life. And I just wanted to make that clear. I gave these characters two different names from the two people who the story is about. The character that represents me, his name is Andrew. And the character who represents my father, who's the other character, his name is Timo. So, Timo and Andrew were born in Aslan, the mythic homeland of the Aztec people. And though they were born in very similar places, their lives couldn't have been more different. Andrew was born to two college students who had parents who were less than perfect. His father, Timo, his father had left him at a very young age and he had no male role models. His mother had parents who were less than empathetic with the way that she lived and the choices that she made. And that affected Timo in a way that would shape the way that both of their lives would be for forever. Timo never wanted to do to his son what hundreds, thousands of men across this country do: leave his son like his father had done to him. And so he made an effort to be there, to make an impression on his son, to show him what a real man acted like. But the problem with this was that Timo was 21 years old when Andrew was born, and had no one. His mother was abusive and never was able to relate to any kind of problems that Timo had ever faced in his life, and he had no role models. Timo's biggest struggle was probably with his machismo, his yelling, and it was something that over many years he learned to deal with in a way that was less harmful for his own family. His biggest fear, he told Andrew, was that he would pass on those problems, the anger, the inability to cope with depression and emotions. So he made an effort. He passed down things to his son that he thought were best for him, but there was still something inside both of them that could never be shaken. A past that goes deeper than the absent parents and abuse that Timo had experienced. A past that goes back to for hundreds of years to people taking something that wasn't theirs. They came from a family of farm workers who were taken out of their homes, who were forced to leave their home and move to Fresno, California, by white people, and they never had experienced any kind of racism like this in Mexico up until this point. And so Timo's parents, or Andrew's parents, wanted to let them know that this displacement that they had felt, this underlying racism, these things that seemed so uncontrollable to them at one point, were not things that Andrew had to suffer through. And going back to another world is possible, that is exactly what Andrew's parents wanted for him.
but I guess a little background before, or like some context. I had my little sister interview me since I didn't want to just like speak, but you don't see like a video of me or anything, it's just like my voice. And so I kind of just talk about my diet and all and how it relates to my identity. You will see a few clips of like, and pictures of like my family, and there's like a few photos of me eating, so I'm sorry about that. And then it's funny because Izzy mentioned Dia de los Reyes Magos / the Three Kings Day. I was born on that day, and it's like a religious holiday, and it's like a tradition to celebrate that in Mexican culture, and I'm sure like other Hispanic and Latinx cultures. So you will see a few of those like photos and like videos and images. So if you see like a big oval looking thing, that's like my birthday cake, since that's like the traditional thing to eat. But yeah, this is my video. Let me turn on the...
Food has always been extremely important to me. It not has only been the source of just staying alive, but it has been something I've used and gravitated towards when trying to understand my identity. Growing up as the daughter of a first-generation immigrants, I never have really experienced my motherland, which is Mexico, firsthand. I've always gravitated towards food and many traditions in my culture as a form of crafting my identity and making it more understandable for not only myself, but for those around me. It also took me a long time to realize that machismo, which is masculinity, and that idea that men hold a higher power, especially in terms when it comes to women and all. Machismo was very ingrained in my diet, especially with the men in my life choosing what I would be eating and what my family would be eating. And it wasn't always like, oh, you're gonna eat this and this, like this is all you're gonna eat. It was mostly like, when we would have family meals, my brother and my dad got to choose, and most of the time it was meat. And I've never been a big fan of meat myself, so deciding to go vegetarian and vegan was something I needed personally, in terms to sort of quote unquote liberate myself from the negative aspects of my culture. And this is something that I chose, especially because growing up as a second generation Latinx, I wanted to change my culture in a way that wasn't going to change it entirely. It was just going to take the negative aspects out of it. So I decided to do another world as possible in the way that I can continue being Mexican, Latina, Hispanic, Chicana in a way that doesn't necessarily mean that I have to engage in eating meat in a way that I have to eat and have a diet that I don't want to have just because my culture says I have to, especially if men say I have to. So I decided to first interview my mom in terms of what she believes her diet means to her.
¿Qué significa la comida para ti?
Todo. Expresar tu cultura y expresar lo que a ti te gusta. Es una arte para mí.
¿Es importante para ti a tener tu dieta, como comer comida mexicana con carne y todo así?
Sí, realmente sí implemento otro tipo de comidas, como ensaladas, pero básicamente siempre caigo a eso, a comer carne. Siento que si no como carne no me lleno. Siento como que comer carne es algo, el plato fuerte.
¿Crees que si no comieras carne no estarías cerca de tu cultura, como la cultura mexicana? Porque tenemos tacos, hicimos tinga,
albóndigas, bisteces. Realmente mi cultura siempre es mucha carne, mucho tipo de grasa. Trato de quitarle un poco la grasa, pero realmente lo que no he podido eliminar es la carne. So es difícil eliminar la carne en total. So mi cultura es comer tostadas de tinga o enchiladas si lleva carne o mole, pollo, pero siempre, siempre, siempre va a ser verduras integradas con la carne, pero jamás solamente la verdura. Siempre tenemos que incorporar la carne a nuestras dietas.
¿Y crees que yo siendo vegetariana me afecta estar cerca de mi cultura?
Sí, porque básicamente cuando estás cerca de nosotros, siempre va a haber alguien que te dice, ¿por qué no comes carne? O trata, mira, ahora come carne. Por un día no te va a hacer daño que comas carne, pero siempre va a haber alguien en la familia, tu papá, tus hermanos, yo, decir, come carne en vez de hacer una comida especial para ti.
Before going vegetarian, tostadas de tinga was my favorite Mexican dish. It was the dish I would ask my grandmother, my mother, my father to make me, especially on special occasions. It is one of the dishes I hold very closely to my heart. So when I went vegetarian, it was quite difficult for me to say no to that. Hence why it took me so long to get used to being vegetarian. So when deciding on what to do with Another World is Possible, I decided to ask my mom to make tostadas de tinga, and I asked her if I could also make tostadas de tinga but vegetarian. So originally tostadas de tinga is composed of shredded chicken, tomatoes, onions, all cooked in chicken broth, and then they are placed on a tostada with cream and then cheese, and then you can put some lettuce on top, some jalapenos, some pickled onions. It's whatever you want. And I decided to do my own take on tostadas de tinga because despite the fact that they are vegetarian, I do follow the recipe in a way that I just replace the chicken with squash and jalapenos and an extra bit of onion and extra bit of tomato. And despite a lot of people not thinking this is 100% traditional, authentic, I follow the tradition in the way that I make the recipe the same way. Instead of cooking it in chicken broth, I add vegetable broth. So upon doing so, I engaged in all these traditional methods of making tinga, but I incorporated a new aspect to it. I incorporated vegetables instead of chicken. So this was very important for me to do because I not only engage in my culture, I not only follow the traditional recipe in a way, but I also incorporate a new aspect to it. So hence another way is possible. And this in a way makes it Latinx. I'm a Latinx individual. I identify Latinx. So making these dishes vegetarian, it doesn't dismiss it of being Latinx. If only it's a new way of looking at Mexican cuisine and Latinx cuisine. So this is why I decided to do this. This is my way of seeing that another world is possible. There are many ways of being Latinx. It's possible to engage in eating and making Mexican cuisine, Latinx cuisine, without it being 100% traditional.
Mine's kind of a spoken word too. It's kind of a poem. It's about anxiety and depression. The first part's kind of like an intro to like how I deal with it, and then the second part's more of like getting into a new world, I guess, for it. So, wake up. I feel my dog cuddling beside me, his chest heaving up and down with every breath. Good, we both made it through the night. I should probably turn off my alarm before everyone in the hall hates me. Food. Should I eat breakfast? No one eats breakfast anymore. Or is it eating breakfast helps you lose weight now? But if I don't eat, I'll consume less calories today. Maybe I'll skip. The dog. I still need to feed him. I need to take him outside. I shouldn't have waited to use the bathroom. It was full then too. Waiting was all for nothing. I'm going to be late to class. Heading out. Did I turn my music on for the dog? I really am a terrible owner for leaving him alone for so long. Did I turn the hair straightener off? Crap, the whole building is going to burn because I can't remember simple things. The walk over, check my emails, my text, my social media, anything to avert making any eye contact. Oh hey, I used to know him. Do I say hi? Imagine if you didn't remember me, we probably weren't that close anyway. I'll just stare at my screen until I get to class to avoid any weirdness. Sit down. Is my dorm room in flames? I think I remember unplugging the straightener. Did I make up that memory? I would probably hear sirens or something if the whole building was on fire. Pay attention. I can't remember anything from last class. Everyone else remembered everything. This is probably the wrong major for me. I'll probably just get my degree and move back home. Lunch. There will be so many people in the cafeteria now. If I wait, I won't run into anyone. I can go make sure I turn my straightener off. I think I walk too fast and people are looking. Break. How much time am I supposed to spend on myself first working? I am exhausted, but all I did was go to class. If I watch TV now, I'm wasting valuable time. I could be accomplishing something. I don't have any hobbies I'm good at anyways. Might as well work. Exercise. I need to refresh my brain. Refocus my energy. I'll go for a run. This body needs it anyway. My feet hit the ground too hard. I breathe too loud. At least I can say I tried. Class again. Participation. I gotta talk more in this class. What do they all think when I talk? I never know what to say or how to say it. My voice is annoying and my thoughts come out wrong. Work. I leave 30 minutes early even though I live 5 minutes away. There could be traffic, an accident, construction. There could be, I use the extra time to sit in the car and listen to music. Run through the daily tasks of my job and how I can avoid any trouble. Serving. What if my managers all think I'm the worst and that's why I have to stay till close? Greet this table, grab this table's order, bring the orders in, grab the drinks, to the food. Did I forget a table, mess up an order? Do they hate me? Are they all going to complain? It's already time to clock off. Drive home. That was actually a good day. No complaints, all my food was right, tips were good, managers seemed happy. I hope that makes up for every mistake I've ever made. Poor dog, alone all day. I'm so selfish. Laying down for bed. Do I let the people I love know how much they mean to me enough? They all probably think I'm needy anyways. Something is always wrong in my life. I can't do anything right. Sleep. Someone could break in while I'm sleeping. The dog might need to go outside and I'll miss his signs that he needs to. Something could happen and I might sleep right through it. I close my eyes and drift off. It's so funny to me. This urban hipness trend to have mental illness, the language when people say, I'm so anxious, I'm so depressed, as if these are things anyone would want to be. The deafening sounds of my own thoughts fill my head all day, drowning out real life around me. Filling my brain with paranoia, the only tradition my brain follows like a daily routine. Yet someone felt anxiety over a test, or depressed over an interview, or someone is bipolar because she's moody. How come mine doesn't have this on-off switch everyone else's was installed with? Am I broken? Does everyone feel the same way I feel? Like my brain is constantly swimming with what-ifs? Am I wasting my whole day daydreaming plots that never even occur? My anxiety cuts deep into every sector of my life, like a wound that treatment put a Band-Aid over, but screams loudly over the Band-Aid, I'm still here and I'm not going anywhere. I resist against the words of my own mind, show myself my achievements, watch myself perform tasks while my brain is screaming, you can't do this, what if? Mine doesn't go away after a test, a speech, a date, an interview, getting approved, getting the reply, winning the race, ending the shift. It accompanies me the whole ride home, reminding me everything I did wrong. I still feel so small. Nothing is wrong with me. Everything is wrong with me. Anxiety is just a feeling, not a mental health issue. It isn't just the attack of thoughts either. It's the rush of all my blood throughout my body when I so much as breathe out of line. It's the racing of my heart straight out of my chest. I accidentally was looking at someone for too long. It's the sweat pooling as if I ran a marathon because I think I heard my supervisor just say my name. It's the clenching of every inch of my body. I can't hide it enough from the judgmental gaze of every stranger. Why would anyone want to label themselves like this? Do my incoherent and obviously more censored, constant inner dialogue and tides of anxious feelings sound like something you want? My brain babbles like a dog left out all night in the rain, like it's experienced some self-inflicted tragedy it can never forget itself for, like a waterfall constantly pushing thoughts into my mind. This isn't trendy. This isn't the newest accessory. It's an ankle monitor to my own personal parole in my mind. But I am careful because of it. I am successful because I can't let myself slip. I know every need to keep myself in line, because if I don't, I won't forget it for the rest of my life.
So before I get to my video, I'm gonna I have a quick introduction. Sorry, I'm really nervous. For my final project, I want to celebrate the presence of Latino, Latinx musicians. Music has always been a passion of mine. From my extensive Spotify library of over 3,000 songs to my participation in my high school vocal program for 4 years, Music has always served as a form of self-expression and celebration of culture. Unfortunately, the music industry, along with the entire entertainment industry, is dominated by white voices and often neglects the work of minority artists. The purpose of my final is to showcase the work of talented minority musicians that have faced great discrimination and oppression to get where they are, and demonstrate my connection with Latino vernacular discourse, creative expression, culture, performance, and space. To demonstrate my connection to an appreciation of music, I created a mashup of 7 different songs written and or sang by Latinx artists and recorded myself singing them. The artists that are featured in this mashup are Cardi B, Bruno Mars, Shakira, Miguel, Jennifer Lopez, and Pitbull. And the songs that are featured are Finesse and the remix, Just the Way You Are, Hips Don't Lie, Banana Clip, I'm Into You, and International Love. I chose these artists and songs due to my love and respect for the artists and the positive implications regarding globalism and culture in the songs. And so a quick note, I used to make mashups in high school, and I had a really cool computer program to make the beat, but I didn't have that because I have a Dell and not a Mac. And so I had to play the songs in the background for the different parts just to give it like a little bit of a music, because it was a little awkward without a beat. And so there's 2 parts of there's 1 second pause when I'm like changing the song, so don't judge me too hard. And I'm not like a wonderful, great singer, so.
Drop top Porsche, rolling on my wrist, diamonds up and down my chain, LED straight, stunning, can't tell me nothing, bossed up and I changed the game. It's my big Bronx boogie, got all the girls shook, my big fat ass got all the boys hooked. I went from dollar bills, now we popping rubber bands. Bruno sing to me while I do my money dance like, ayy, flexing on the ground like, ayy. Hit the Lil Jon, okay. Oh yeah, we dripping and finessing, getting paid, ow. And her eyes make stars look like they're not shining. Her hair falls perfectly without her trying. She's so beautiful, and I tell her every day. Yeah, I know, once you compliment her, she won't believe me. And it's so sad to think that she don't see what I see. But every time she asks me, do I look okay, I say, ooh, baby, when you talk like that, you make a woman go mad. So be wise and keep on reading the signs of my body. And I'm on tonight, you know my hips don't lie, and I'm starting to feel it's right. All the attraction, the tension, don't you know, baby, this is perfection. There's war on love, just look around you. It's hard to know who to trust, so glad I found you. You and me, we climb higher, baby crescendo. And gotta love, it won't stop, it's that extendo. Ooh, baby, when you talk like that, you make a woman go mad. So be wise and keep on reading the signs of my body. And I'm on tonight, you know my hips don't lie, and I'm starting to feel it right. The tension, can't you see, baby, this is perfection. They can't see me, oh no, I got the camo, yeah. Ready, I'm ready like I'm Rambo, yeah. Gotta hate that the love got the ammo, yeah. I put the green defender, you know I'll never surrender, no. 'Cause when I look into your eyes, it's over. Got me hooked with your love controller. I'm tripping and I could not get over. I feel lucky like a 4-leaf clover. Because you put it down like a New York City. I never sleep while like a Los Angeles. My fantasy hotter than Miami. I feel the heat. Oh. It's international love. Oh. It's international love. Whoa, international love.
Alright, so I am Gabe. For my project, I'm focusing on identity. So throughout the class, it's just what stuck with me. The complexities that come with identity, obviously, it's something that's completely dependent upon experiences, I feel like. So it's important to acknowledge those experiences in order to understand your identity. And so what I did, basically, music is a big part of my identity. I make beats, I guess, so I decided to make sort of an instrumental and do sort of a spoken word type thing over the beat. And so throughout the piece, I'm sort of talking about my experiences with my identity and how I sort of navigate. And I talk about growing up. I'm from San Francisco. So I grew up in a neighborhood called the Mission District in San Francisco, California. And that neighborhood is predominantly Latino. It's sort of the Latino hub of San Francisco. I went to middle school there, and the middle school was a few blocks away from my grandma's house, so I would always be there in that sort of neighborhood. And so I talk about that. I also talk about sort of media and representation and sort of how the public views me. So the key terms that I include are space, media representation, labor, systematic racism, and identity. So throughout the piece, you can probably hear those keywords pop up at some point. And so I kind of didn't think I was gonna get that personal with this, but I did end up getting a little personal. So I just want to acknowledge my best friend, or my brother's best friend, Jacob Valdivieso, who was killed when he was 20 years old, a few blocks away from my grandma's house. He went to Lewis and Clark College, and he was visiting back home to see his mom, and he was shot sitting outside of his house, like at night. And people said, like, obviously it was gang-related activity, but we really all know that Jacob wasn't in a gang or anything. So I just want to acknowledge him, and a big inspiration was for Jacob, and I want to dedicate this to him. And also a piece by Lisa Flores that talks about Chicana feminism and living between wars and stuff. So being Mexican American, I sort of deal with navigating between being American and being Mexican. And so I also mentioned that in the music thing. So yeah, a big part of it is obviously I talk about space. That's it'll come up, reoccur a couple times throughout the piece. So yeah, let's go ahead and play.
I was born and raised in San Francisco, California. I grew up in a neighborhood with people who looked like me, surrounded by violence. My brother's best friend killed a few blocks away from my grandma's house. Our car's been broken into, my best friend's been jumped, and I keep hearing of stories of violence from back home, innocent lives being taken. But this is the space I was given. This is the space I was given. This is the space I was given. This was the space I was given. The media out to represent me as a criminal. People taking what they see on the TV screen as the sole truth. What if I told you that I'm none of those things you see? You see, it's kind of hard to put yourself in my shoes. All these things I've been through create my identity. It's something that I can't change. All the pain of my people, the labor we put in to make ends meet, to try and make a better life for the future, and our families don't seem to work. It goes unnoticed. But this is the space I was given. This was the space I was given. This is the space I was given. The system is structured against us, so how are we supposed to be able to make it? Racism built from within. And while I'm focused on the vision for a better life, I get distracted with all this division between people of different colored pigments, and sometimes it's like I'm living between borders. Not American enough, not Mexican enough. But oh well, I can't dwell. Gotta move on. And this time I'm making my own space, making my own space, making my own space, making my own space.
You, babe. That was amazing. You got me crying on that one. I have the really difficult task of trying to follow up the amazing, incredible work that you've done. I simply can't say anything that will match or do honor or justice to the amazing work that you've done all semester, but especially now in these culminating performances. So I just want to thank you so much for being so brave, for sharing things that were incredibly poignant, incredibly difficult, incredibly heavy, and for doing that so well, and also with academic rigor, including those key terms. So I really do appreciate that. So I just wanted to open the floor for any comments, or if anyone had a question about like how a video was put together, or anything like that that you might want to know about from our class members. And it's okay too because there's a lot. we could spend the next week trying to unpack all of the wonderful, hard, trying things you've shared. Yeah, Nikki.
I just want to say, Izzy, is she in here? Oh, how did I not see you? Okay, sorry about that. I just wanted to say, like, yours was really powerful. That was really moving. Like, I don't have any more words to say about it, but that was really good.
Thank you. Yeah.
I think everyone honestly did a really good job. A lot of the personal stories are just like things you just don't get to hear in your own life. But I think really everyone did a good job.
Absolutely. Any other reactions or final thoughts?
Shout out to Gabe, because I was with you when you made the beat last night, and it's turned out so cool. Like, that was one of the coolest things I've ever heard. So
That was amazing. Yeah, you should blast that from the central square. That would be great. Any other comments before we move on to our related self-reflections? Okay, so thank you to our guests for being here. I really appreciate it. That was wonderful. And thank you to Luis Mendoza for doing wonderful